Hello, welcome. Welcome to Understanding Economics, and I have to say you're brave to even click on that link because economics is usually a fearsome thought for most of us. It's the subject or the science of how we make a living, and that is a troublesome thing. Is it the study of how people get rich? Is it the study of how a few people get rich and make it hard for the rest of us, for the 99%? Is it a study of how we should take some of the money away from the rich so the rest of us will have an easier time? Or should the rich keep more of what they produce with their innovation and their risk-taking so that the economy will grow? Discussions about economics have a way of devolving into competing monologues in which the volume goes up but not too much ever gets really resolved or said. And you know, it's been that way for a long time. Lord Macaulay, the British parliamentarian, was famously said that if there were moneyed interests who cared about disputing the law of gravity, people would be lining up to deny the reality of gravity. Henry George, the great American political economist on whose ideas a lot of this course will be based, said this: "Economic truth under existing conditions has not merely to overcome the inertia of indolence or habit. It is in its very nature subject to suppressions and distortions from the influence of the most powerful and vigilant interests. It has not merely to make its way, it must constantly stand on guard." So we can't trust the experts and the politicians. We have to figure out what's going on with the economy for ourselves as citizens. The first thing we need to do if we're going to understand economics is we need to figure out what we want to know. We need to clarify the basic questions that we should ask in order to understand economic principles. And so, to do that, I'd like to take you through an exercise that we've done many times in the classroom to help people clarify the questions that they have about basic economic problems. One of the first things on everyone's mind these days is corporate greed. Everyone feels the burn because everyone feels like the 1% is taking control of our society. And this makes it very difficult to provide for the welfare of our poorest people. Poverty always seems to be with us, and what can we do about it? And what is the cause of it? Some people say the root cause of poverty is simply overpopulation, our tendency to breed too many people for the carrying capacity of our planet. Whether that's true or not, unemployment seems to be a chronic problem in our society. People are always looking for scarce jobs, which leads people to take jobs at low wages, wages at which they struggle to get by. So we think perhaps education could be a magic bullet. If people get better skills and better training, maybe they can work for higher wages. Meanwhile, society struggles to provide for infrastructure, the public goods and services we need to make a modern economy work. But who pays for it? And what does the cost of infrastructure, how is that distributed in our society? Meanwhile, again, how do we provide people with decent, affordable housing, the cost of which seems to go up and up and up? As does the cost of health care. And society struggles with the question of whether health care is a right or a privilege. And again, we seem to have this constant problem of a looming depression. When is the economy going to turn down next time? And how are we going to deal with that? We're going to have more unemployment because of the boom-bust cycle. Is this a matter of foreign competition? Do we have, as Donald Trump says, or as H. Ross Perot said, a great sucking sound as our jobs go to China or to Mexico? One of the reasons we're worried about losing jobs here is that we're worried about pollution. We don't want to destroy the environment, and yet there's a global environmental problem of climate change that must be dealt with. But do we have to sacrifice our prosperity so that we can keep from destroying the planet? But closer to home is everyone's concern about taxes. They always seem to be too high. They always seem to be going up and up and up, and the cost of big government seems to be out of control. And there's a looming threat of inflation, which could get out of control. The money could be worth less and less, and there's a tension between inflation and unemployment. If we have too much of the one, we won't have enough of the other. Now, you might not see war as an economic problem, but let me just suggest that we don't see war, we generally don't see the tendency toward war and terrorism in societies that are prosperous. It's people who are struggling for control of land and resources that often take the desperate steps that lead to war. Well, now, when we started out, I said that you were brave to even consider these issues, and here's why. This, I think, is a pretty accurate picture of what comes into most people's mind when they hear the word economics. All of these problems, and it seems that if we try to fix one, we make another one worse. For example, okay, if we want to do something about corporate greed, what does that mean? It might mean we have to tax the corporations, and we have to give big government more power. And we don't really want that, because if we have too much taxation, we're going to make it hard for people to find jobs, and we're going to contribute to unemployment. And if we put too much money into the economy to make people able to spend more money and create demand for more goods and services to provide unemployment, will cause too much inflation, which is a constant problem in our economy. There's this tension between inflation and unemployment. If we're worried about public welfare and poverty, then we have to have big government do something to counteract corporate greed. But if the government plays too much of a role in the economy, it'll pull too much money out of the private sector, which will create unemployment, which might even put our economy into a depression. Furthermore, we're constantly worried about the effects of our industrial economy on the earth. Climate change and pollution is a constant problem. But if we do something about these, won't it pull back the influence of business and create more unemployment and more poverty, and make it harder for us to provide for health care and infrastructure and housing? Pretty soon our economy looks even more chaotic. I think we can come up with some basic questions that will help us to make sense of this chaotic picture. The first and most important and most basic question is, why is there poverty? The cause is very important, because if we don't know the true cause, then our attempts to solve the problem are going to fall flat. Is there too much poverty because of overpopulation, because of underproduction? What is the source of poverty in a productive society? Next, and a related question, is why are there boom-bust cycles? Why is it the economy can't keep growing and improve its ability to provide for everyone? It seems that as soon as the economy starts going well, it inevitably declines. Unemployment increases, poverty increases. To solve the problem of poverty, we're also going to have to come up with a reason for these boom-bust cycles. And this is something that economics has struggled with for quite a long time. Yes, there are trade-offs in the economy because our desires are unlimited, and we have to make decisions about what to put our efforts into. Trade-offs are a real thing. But it's very important for us to understand which trade-offs are absolutely necessary and which aren't. Must we trade between equity and efficiency? In other words, if we redistribute some of the wealth to take care of the people on the bottom, will we retard the growth of the economy and make it harder for the economy to grow and provide for everyone? Is this a necessary trade-off, or is there a way for the economy to be both equitable and efficient? This is a huge question in economic policy. Another similarly important trade-off, or apparent trade-off, is must we trade between prosperity and sustainability? In other words, can we have a growing society that provides more wealth for everyone without doing irreparable damage to our environment? Now, those are the four basic questions that any course in political economy is going to have to come to grips with. And in our next segment, we're going to start right in on the first basic question. Why is there poverty? Why does poverty persist in the midst of a tremendously abundant society? We're going to look at some of the standard rationales, explanations, excuses for these conditions, and see where that comes up with. Join us next time. Thanks for watching. Understanding Economics is a presentation of the Henry George School of Social Science. Check out their website right here. Our videographer, Uladzimir Taukachu, many thanks to him, and look at his work right here. In our next segment, we're going to look at some of the standard explanations for the problem of poverty.